Welcome back, Defenders. Today's video is very important because on Monday, Donald Trump was sworn in as the 47th President of the United States. Please don't turn off the video. I know so many of you are sick and tired of hearing about Donald Trump, but let me show you why this is important. This is a picture of a Ukrainian defender from the 54th Brigade in Donetsk, watching Donald Trump's inauguration live on an iPad, in a bunker, in the middle of a war zone, looking for what's coming next. The era of speculation of what Donald Trump will do is officially over. We're there. He's president. We're now going to be talking about what is Donald Trump doing today. And I'm shocked, but it's almost all good news for Ukraine. This is what we're going to get into. Stick with me. First of all, reality bites. Trump tells retired Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg to end the war in Ukraine in 100 days. All of the talk of I can end this war in 24 hours, well, now we're going for 100 days. This is more realistic, and I think this is a good thing that we're now living in reality. Donald Trump is listening to his experts. And retired Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg says, "You can't do it in 24 hours, Mr. President, but I believe we can do this in 100 days. This would take us to April or May, and yeah, it'd be fantastic if we could get this war over by April or May." So we're now getting a new cast of characters. Jake Sullivan is gone, Antony Blinken is gone, and this is the new Secretary of State. Ukraine ceasefire is top priority for Trump, according to Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio was unanimously confirmed in a vote, 99-0, and I like this guy, he gets it. He understands the Russians. So let me show you this clip of Marco Rubio speaking, and it's about the language. What language is he using? Let me play this clip.
The promise the president made, really, if you look at it, is it's going to be the priority. It's going to be the official policy of the United States that the war in Ukraine needs to come to an end. It is a stalemate. It's a war and it's a conflict that was started by Russia. But it is now a stalemate, a protracted and bloody conflict, been incredibly
Russia started this war, not NATO. We're not going to talk about NATO enlargement or NATO expansion anymore. This is the language that the Trump administration is using everywhere. Russia started this war.
Destructive, I would argue, for both Russia and Ukraine, but Ukraine is paying the biggest price of all, to its energy infrastructure, to the people, lives that are lost, to the millions of Ukrainians that have had to leave their countries and are living overseas. The conflict needs to end. And it's a policy of the United States that we want it to end. We want to do everything we can to help it end. We're going to engage in making it end and in a way that is sustainable, meaning we don't just want the conflict to end and then restart in 2, 3, or 4 years down the road. We want to bring stability. We have a lot of important and pressing issues around the world, and I think everyone should wake up.
Those are the words. We need to end the war that is sustainable. We want stability. Now, Ukraine has been using the language of security guarantees. We need security guarantees to end the war so Russia just doesn't attack us again. And Marco Rubio is using different language, talking about stability and sustainability, but it's the exact same thing. Marco Rubio is working towards a long-term solution that will prevent Russia from attacking Ukraine again. This is good news. Trump makes 90-day foreign aid freeze, Ukraine military support supposedly untouched. So one of the 1,000 executive orders that Donald Trump signed on Monday was halting all disbursement of U.S. development assistance for 90 days. This isn't a big deal, but when you read this headline, it makes people in Ukraine nervous, and as far as I can tell, all cooperation and assistance to Ukraine from the United States is not being halted or interrupted. I guess you could say, USAID has already fully dispersed all direct budget supplement support. This is legal language, but basically everything's already been allocated by Biden. It's just being delivered. So Trump didn't halt anything for Ukraine when he took office. And indeed, military supplies are continuing. At least one 747 full of supplies for Ukraine was delivered on Trump's first day in office. He didn't halt it. It's not being stopped. Military aid and cooperation from the United States to Ukraine is still continuing. Trump could have stopped this if he wanted to. And now we're getting the language from Trump now that he's president. Trump plans to call Putin days after taking office. So Trump wants to speak to Putin now that he's president, but this call hasn't happened yet. It could have happened. It could have happened on Monday, Tuesday, or even today, but Trump hasn't spoken to Putin yet. Why is that? I don't think Donald Trump appreciated this move. Putin and Xi tout growing partnership during a video call. On the day of Trump's inauguration, China and Russia decided to have a phone conversation over video chat and release it to the media. This is not a coincidence. Xi and Putin could have had this phone call on Sunday. They could have had this phone call on Tuesday. They had the phone call on Monday to send a message to Trump that they're not going to tolerate him being a global superpower, the lone hegemon in the world. And this is what Dmitry Medvedev confirms. Here is a post from Medvedev on Telegram. This is what Medvedev is saying. It is obvious that the main takeaway from the rather amusing inauguration of the US president was the dialogue between the leaders of Russia and China, which took place after yesterday's event. It served as the best proof of the multipolarity of the modern world and the strategic partnership of our countries. Once again, it has become clear to everyone that the modern world is not interested in the golden age of America, which Donald Trump theatrically declared yesterday, but in the development and prosperity of all humanity. Guys, we need MAGA on our side. And this is a gift. Spread this message from former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev that the Russians are not interested in a golden age for America under Donald Trump, and that they want a multipolar world. Just logically think about this. If you're Donald Trump or a Trump supporter, why would you want to share power on the global stage? Why would you want to have to consult with the Russians and the Chinese before you make important decisions, like invading Greenland and Panama? I'm not laughing, that's a serious matter. But we're going to get conflict. It's only been 2.5 days, and the Russians and Trump are already clashing. This is good for Ukraine. US likely to sanction Russia if Moscow refuses peace negotiations. Confirmed by Trump. He said it himself. It's on camera. Let's play the video.
Vladimir Putin doesn't come to the table to negotiate with you. Will you put additional sanctions on Russia?
Sounds likely.
And do you think that the war should be frozen currently?
So the reporter asked, would you increase sanctions on Russia? And Trump said yes. He never said this during the campaign. I can find for you the clip 6 months ago in which a reporter asked Trump, what do you think of sanctions on Russia? And Trump responded, I'm not a big fan of sanctions. Sanctions on Russia is hurting the United States more than it's hurting Russia. That's what Trump said as a candidate. And now that he's president, he's saying something completely different. Putin is destroying Russia by not making a deal to end the war. This is a clip. I'll link the entire thing down below. The lighting's not very good because it's late at night, and the audio is not good because it's kind of an echoey room. This is the Oval Office. Trump is doing a marathon signing of like 1,000 executive orders, and reporters are just casually asking him questions. And of course, they asked him about Russia and Ukraine, and this is what Trump said Monday night.
I have to speak to President Putin. We're going to have to find out. He can't be thrilled. He's not doing so well. I mean, he's grinding it out, but most people thought that war would have been over in about 1 week.
So this is Trump dunking on Putin, saying the war is not going well for Putin. Everyone thought the war would be over in a week, and it's still going on 3 years later.
And now you're into 3 years, right? So he can't be thrilled. It's not making him look very good. Now, eventually, you know, I mean, it's a big machine, so things will happen. But I think it'd be very well off to end that war. We have numbers that almost 1 million Russian soldiers have been killed.
So Trump is lying, saying that almost 1 million Russian soldiers have been killed. Ukraine's own estimate of casualties, wounded and killed, is close to 800,000. The true number of soldiers fighting for Russia killed is probably closer to 300 or 400,000. Still a lot. But Trump is now spreading disinformation to make Russia look bad. And everyone in MAGA will probably now start repeating this information. This is good for Ukraine.
About 700,000 Ukrainian soldiers are killed.
700,000 Ukrainian soldiers have not been killed. That might be total casualties, and Ukraine is better about saving the lives of their soldiers. There's a lot of wounded people who served in the Ukrainian military, but Trump is deliberately saying that Ukraine is doing better because they've taken fewer casualties. That's the point he was trying to make.
Russia's bigger, they have more soldiers to lose. But that's no way to run a country.
You said you plan to speak with President Putin soon. What about President Zelenskyy? What's your message?
Yeah, I would, but he's told me he wants to make a deal. Zelenskyy wants to make a deal.
Zelenskyy wants to make a deal, and Zelenskyy does. So Trump is not saying anything negative, anything bad about President Zelenskyy or Ukraine. 6 months ago, he was calling Zelenskyy the greatest salesman in the history of the world. Every time he comes to the United States, he walks away with a check for $100 billion. That's what Trump was saying to MAGA 6 months ago. And now he's not saying anything critical of Zelenskyy anymore.
I don't know if Putin does. He might not. I mean, he should make a deal. I think he's destroying Russia by not making a deal. I think Russia's going to be in big trouble. You take a look at their economy, you take a look at the inflation in Russia.
So Trump then just casually talks about how inflation in Russia is so bad and their economy is being destroyed. This is fun, guys. Trump tells Putin to make Ukraine deal now or face tariffs and sanctions. So here's the tweet from this morning, and this is fantastic, guys. Let's go through this together because there's a lot to unpack. Trump starts by saying, this is his Truth Social account, "I'm not looking to hurt Russia. I'm not looking to hurt Russia as a threat. Trump just threatened Putin. I love the Russian people, and I always had a very good relationship with President Putin, and this despite the radical left's Russia, Russia, Russia hoax. We must never forget that Russia helped us win the Second World War, losing almost 60 million lives in the process." So this is really going to upset Putin and the Russians, saying that Russia helped the United States win World War II instead of the United States helping Russia win World War II, which is how they frame the war. They don't even call it World War II. They call it the Great Patriotic War. And they claim the United States only had a minor role in helping defeat the Nazis. Russia's casualties also weren't 60 million. That would include all civilians. It's closer to 50. And this is Soviet deaths. This is not Russian deaths. Of this 60 million number, a lot of them were Ukrainians or people from the Baltics, the Caucasus, and Central Asia that Stalin forced into his military. Only 5% of modern Russia was ever under Nazi control. Meanwhile, Ukraine was 100% under Nazi control for 2 full years. Trump doesn't need to know this. All of that being said, I'm going to do Russia, whose economy is failing, and President Putin a very big favor. Settle now and stop this ridiculous war. It's only going to get worse. If we don't make a deal and soon, I have no other choice but to put high levels of taxes, tariffs, and sanctions on anything being sold by Russia to the United States and various other participating countries. Okay, this part is stupid because there's almost no imports to the United States from Russia for us to tax or put tariffs on. But as far as sanctions, we have that testimony from U.S. Treasury Secretary, I've already forgotten his name, but this was the hearing last week, and Trump's secretary nominee said he's in favor of high-level sanctions on Russia's oil industry to cripple them, to make them stop this war. Trump will eventually be told what he can do. Let's get this war, which never would have started if I were president, over with. We can do it the easy way or the hard way. And the easy way is a lot better. It's time to make a deal. No more lives should be lost. Well, I'm going to share with you the reaction of Garry Kasparov. Putin stopped reading after the first sentence. Russia won't stop its unprovoked war on Ukraine without the pain of much higher military, economic, and political costs. For the next 100 days, this is what we're going to do. Trump is going to tease and harass Putin on social media, hoping that Putin will just give up on his dreams of reconstituting the Soviet Empire. And then after 100 days, I think Trump is going to initiate some kind of Lend-Lease program for Ukraine and give them more military aid, and then impose the most devastating sanctions imaginable on Russia to cripple them. Two things that Joe Biden was never willing to do for 3 years as president. Here's Garry Kasparov's recommendation to Trump: stop looking for common ground with a war criminal leading a terrorist regime that's invading Europe. That's what Obama and Biden tried at and failed, while emboldening other belligerent authoritarians like China and Iran. If Trump wants peace, it has to be through strength in Ukraine. Bravo. Bravo. Trump has no substitute for victory in Ukraine. So all of the crazy people who have sympathies towards Russia are not talking to Trump anymore about this war. Elon Musk has nothing to do with the war planning. RFK Jr. has nothing to do with the war planning. Trump's national security team is Mike Waltz, I approve of, Marco Rubio, retired Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, and maybe Pete Hegseth if he gets in, but Hegseth is basically neutral on Ukraine. So Trump is figuring it out that maintaining good relations with the G7, maintaining good relations with the EU and NATO is in America's best security and economic interests. Why would we do Russia any favors? During the campaign, I think Trump was okay with Russian bot farms helping him get elected. But now that he's been elected and sworn in, what does he need Russia's help for anymore? Trump is turning on the Russians. And I'm all for this, guys. So Trump said that his administration was looking into sending additional weapons to Ukraine, but first, Europe should be doing more to support Ukraine. There's an easy win here. If the NATO alliance agrees to increase their spending relative to their GDP, increase it to 3 or 3.5%, it doesn't matter if they hit that target in the next 10 years, they just have to say they want to. If they agree to this, Donald Trump will be okay, I think, with a Lend-Lease style assistance program. There won't be any more free military aid. I don't think Congress will appropriate anything, but Ukraine can be given a line of credit to buy whatever they want, and then after the war, they've got to give it back or pay it back through making a deal. And Zelenskyy has already offered Trump so many good options. Zelenskyy publicly has said, if the United States doesn't want to have their troops on the European continent anymore, Ukraine will become the protector of Europe. The Ukrainian military will be stationed along the eastern flank in order to protect Europe from Russia in the future. And Ukraine is willing to make deals with Trump, with American companies, to get oil, gas, and natural resources out of the ground. That would be a huge victory for Trump, that he could tell his supporters, look what these two things I got for America. Russia can't offer anything like that to Trump, guys. So let me share with you some other headlines, things that have happened in the last 2.5 days. Trump claims he urged China's Xi to help end Russia's war in Ukraine. This is another pressure point. Biden was never willing to place sanctions on China or interrupt trade relations with China. But Donald Trump doesn't care. If Donald Trump thinks he can apply pressure on China with economic policy to force the Chinese to apply pressure on the Russians with economic policy, I think over the next 100 days he's going to explore this, and we'll know about it. He's going to make the threats on Twitter before he actually does anything. But now China's Xi has to worry about this. If China's Xi does not apply pressure to Russia, America is going to apply pressure on China. This was interesting. Kremlin critic Khodorkovsky attended Trump's inauguration. Now, this guy is a billionaire. That might be the only reason why he was invited. But Mikhail Khodorkovsky is a Russian dissident. Putin imprisoned this guy for 10 years, and Putin hates him. And Trump made it a point to invite him to his inauguration. That's pretty funny. And I know that President Zelenskyy technically was not invited to Trump's inauguration. Don't worry about that. There were other people from Ukraine at the event. One of them I want to share with you is the chief rabbi of Ukraine. This is Rabbi Osman. And on social media, he was posting pictures of all the people that he was talking to at the inauguration ball. Here's the chief rabbi of Ukraine with Rudy Giuliani, trying to explain to Rudy Giuliani why it's so important for America to support Ukraine. And here's the chief rabbi of Ukraine talking to Roger Stone. And Roger Stone loves Russia. So this is a fantastic photo, and I'm sure this conversation didn't go well. But bless this man for trying. Bless this man for trying. This is interesting. Russia blasts the United States for reinstatement of Cuba on the terror watch list. President Biden removed Cuba from the state sponsor of terror list, and Trump immediately put Cuba back on the list. And I support this. This is a good thing, because the Cubans back in July allowed Russian warships to dock in the port of Havana. I'm sorry to the government of Cuba, but if you're going to cozy up to the Russians and allow their warships to sail into the Caribbean, then yes, you're going back on the state sponsor of terrorism list. This is a good thing. Here's a tweet from Trump's national security advisor, Mike Waltz. President Trump will not look kindly upon groups and countries holding Americans hostage. We will do everything we can for these families and to stop this madness. So what's a country in the world that's currently holding on to Americans? And it's the Russians. And I think this individual, if you remember him, this is Staff Sergeant Gordon Black. He went AWOL from his units after leaving South Korea. He just casually swung into Vladivostok to visit Russia to get into an argument with his Russian girlfriend, and the Russians have been holding on to him. This is an active duty service member who's a big Trump supporter, by the way. He's got videos online saying how much he loves Trump. This was while Biden was president. And I think we need to talk this guy up. I think we need to make this guy a martyr. I don't want anything bad to happen to him, so martyr is not the good word here. But if Russia is holding on to a Trump supporter, an active duty military member, refusing to give them back, we need to be talking about this guy. We need to be telling MAGA that one of their own is being persecuted and held hostage by the Russians, and the Russians won't give him back. I might make a separate video and try and get this guy some more attention. I genuinely don't want him suffering in a Russian prison. I want him to come home. When he comes home, he will be punished for going AWOL. But he's ours. He's ours to punish, not the Russians. So while Trump was getting sworn in, President Zelenskyy was in Switzerland. This was in Davos. Zelenskyy stressed his goal of fair and reliable end to the war in 2025. Let me play for you a clip of President Zelenskyy at the World Economic Forum.
Ladies and gentlemen, Europe can't afford to be second or third in line for its allies. If that happens, the world will start moving forward without Europe. And that's a wall that will not be comfortable or beneficial for all Europeans. Europe needs to compete for the top spot in priorities, alliances, and technological development. And we are at yet another turning point, which some see as a problem for Europe, but others call a chance. Europe must establish itself as a strong global player, as an indispensable player. Let's not forget, there is no ocean separating European countries from Russia.
There's no ocean separating Europe from Russia. And I think this is a tone shift in language from Zelenskyy towards Europe in order to flatter or compliment Trump. I think now that Trump is president, Zelenskyy is going to be more critical of European aid and Europe's militaries, because this is what Trump is saying and what Trump probably wants Zelenskyy to say. Now, Zelenskyy is a true statesman. He's going to be very diplomatic in what he says, but it's time for Europe to wake up. This war has been going on for 3 years. The Europeans have had every opportunity to industrialize, scale up, increase their militaries. Russia's 1 million man force dwarfs the combined European armies. So add up all of the armies of Europe minus Ukraine, and Russia still has a larger military than all of them combined. 3 years into this full-scale war. Putin to return with 10 times larger army without security guarantees. Zelenskyy says this at Davos. We're going to get something. People are talking. I think the UK and France have already publicly said that they'd send a peacekeeping force if there was a freeze in the conflict. Zelenskyy states that any peacekeeping force less than 200,000 soldiers is not going to be enough. It won't deter the Russians. And the Russians will just come back after conscription and mobilization, and Putin will do whatever he can, once again, to get his empire back. But the good news for the free world is that the Russians are corrupt and incompetent, and they really just suck at war. So let's get to the bad news for Russia. Drones target Smolensk aviation plant, trigger an oil depot fire in Voronezh. Here's the video. This aviation plant was producing Kh-55 and 59 cruise missiles, and now it's on fire. There's also a lot of oil depot and oil refinery fires. I honestly can't keep track of them all. Ukraine went literally ballistic the last 2 weeks, targeting Russia's energy infrastructure. And a lot of these oil depots, this is a picture of the 5th day of the fire at this oil depot. Explosions rock Kazan as Ukrainian drones target a strategic bomber factory. This bomber factory produces and repairs 2 160 missile carriers and 2 22 M3 bombers. Siberian police arrest military officer filmed beating soldiers. There's a lot of videos online. I can't share them all or mention them all, but discipline in the Russian military is absolutely barbaric. And 3 years into this war, with everything getting worse by the day, the brutality of Russian command and officers against their contract soldiers or conscripts, it's horrifying. They filmed this on purpose, and they posted on social media on purpose to scare and intimidate their own, to continue this war. When I think the average Russian, I think with Trump being inaugurated and these first 2.5 days, this is going to be a huge morale defeat. I think there were a lot of Z patriots hoping that when Trump got into office, that he would immediately save Russia, lift all sanctions, end all military aid. And that just hasn't happened in the first 2.5 days. So this is a wake-up call for the Russians. I'll link this video down below if you want to see some of the brutality. There's also this video. Servicemen from the 80th Guards Tank Regiment returned to their unit from the hospital and then were immediately brutally beaten by their comrades, and they don't know why. Allegations of drug use. Sure, okay. Russian soldier kills commander as troop unrest grows in Zaporizhia. This is according to partisans. If you're going to die anyways, might as well take out your commander who's been stealing your paycheck and beating you. Russia's 2024 harvest falls below expectations on bad weather and supply chain woes. Your harvests are weak, Russia. Boom. Burn. Finland seizes tanker suspected of damaging Baltic Sea cable. This is the Eagle S tanker, and a Finnish court has ordered the seizure, and Russia's not getting it back. Russia claims it was an accident damaging these underwater cables, but even if it was an accident, you're not getting your ship back. Let's get to the good news for Ukraine. Aside from everything else in the video, Albania signs 10-year security cooperation agreement with Ukraine. Thank you so much to the fantastic people of Albania. Lithuania sends drones, thermal imagers, and telescopic loaders to Ukraine. Thank you so much to the fantastic people of Lithuania. Final two clips I have for you. The first one is of a Ukrainian defender training on a simulator to shoot down Russian Shahed drones. Pretty cool. That's a MetaQuest 3, by the way. Final video I have for you is another birthday on the front lines.
Днем народження, командир! Днем народження, командир! Днем народження, командир в Києві! З днем народження тебе! Надо желание! О, тяга, блядь! Тяга є, діти!
We don't know what he wished for, but I think we can take a good guess. It's probably the same thing that every Ukrainian defender wants right now. That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.